PayMeNow or PayMe a lot more later. How to get the budget you need to prevent catastrophes, not clean them up, presented by Jeremy Swanner with RLE Technologies. Next slide, please. I do want to let everyone know they have been muted for audio quality, and this presentation is being recorded. If you do have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box, and we'll go over them during the Q&A portion of the webinar. Next slide, please. The FMCC does provide many services to the FM community, such as Ask the Expert, Find a Consultant, Locate a Speaker, and online educational resources. You may find more information at their website, fmcc.ifma.org. Next slide, please. And we are going to be utilizing a poll later on in the webinar. We encourage you to partake. And again, we have the Q&A portion at the end, and I do want to encourage everyone to take the survey at the end of the webinar. The board of directors eagerly reviews your feedback of these presentations. Next slide, please. And as always, we would like to thank our sponsors of these webinars. And the next slide. Next slide. And go ahead, next slide. And I do want to present our speaker, Jeremy Swanner. He, critical facilities monitoring utilizes every technology, and the field requires management that can adapt to an increased demand for resources and security. Like you, data center and critical facility expert, Jeremy Swanner has adapted to and predicted the changes. With more than 25 years in the trenches experience in the critical facility space, Jeremy has intimate knowledge from a variety of perspectives, with a focus on how to better protect sensitive facilities from threats. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jeremy.
Thank you, Joshua, very much. Today, the learning objectives will be recognized why making a case for comprehensive facility monitoring to the people holding the purse strings is so important. Discuss the multiple ways that facility downtime impacts the performance of your business. Understand how facility downtime impacts your reputation and job security. And also learn how to quantify and justify the needed budget and staffing to fully protect your facility. To reach our learning objectives, we will get into the cost and probabilities of downtime, as well as the different types of cost, including some that you may not have thought about. Downtime impacts more than just productivity. There are a number of intangible and hard to quantify impacts as well that we will discuss. Many facility managers only look at downtime from the perspective of how it impacts the company. And trust me, there are personal impacts as well. We will cover a clear three-step process for presenting a rock-solid case for the budget you need to protect your facility, not only from the top-of-mind threats, but the more likely and less flashy dangers. So why is facility monitoring important? Loss of data is certainly one concern, but most companies' IT staff has a good off-site backup plan for data. But what about irreplaceable assets in your facility, such as documents, artifacts, etc.? Recently, the Civil War document repository had a flood. The flood occurred through leaking pipes, and the sensitive documents were not all restorable. Millions in cleanup and restoration were spent, and still some of the documents and artifacts were irretrievable and not replaceable. Equipment replacement costs are rising dramatically, which we will get into later in the presentation. The facility cleanup and disaster recovery business is booming. There is a reason for that. We're going to start with a number of statistics and metrics that you can use to highlight the importance of monitoring to your decision makers. Here's a slide with typical causes of downtime. The chart represents the single most common cause of downtime in a facility. Note the mundane nature of these threats. You have to get all the way down to the earthquake before it becomes any type of epic event. And even then, the likelihood of those events are low. With preparation, about 62% of these downtime causes can be eliminated or dramatically reduced with monitoring and a good plan. Another source for causes of downtime Here you see another way of looking at the data. This represents what a survey of 450 data center facility engineers cited as causes of downtime that they have experienced in the last 2 years. Again, you see that many of these could have been reduced or eliminated by proper monitoring and disaster planning. I would like to point out the green items represent areas that RLE sees as being easily reduced or eliminated. Little problems can cost you big. This is just to cite one example. And even though you may manage a full data center, nearly every facility has a server space of some kind incorporated. We'll get into some additional industry data next, but I'd like to point out the $7,900 per minute, up by 41% from 2010, and those costs continue to rise, as we'll show in coming slides. The average cost of a downtime at 119 minutes is roughly $900,000. And it does get worse depending on what industry that you're in. The hospitality sector, public sector, transportation, financial, as you see on here, is hard to grasp some data. We do have a slide coming up that will show you some data on the financial, but all of these industries have a higher downtime cost. And keep in mind, this is just raw productivity, equipment and cleanup cost. The impact on a reputation is intangible and possibly more damaging. Once again, these numbers are based on hard, quantifiable cost only. What's the cost of 1 hour of downtime at your facility resulting from an environmental issue? Most managers would put the finger in terms of lost productivity alone. But in reality, there may be equipment damage, loss of data, either electronically or in hard copy form, building infrastructure damage, and many more reasons. This slide gives you a breakdown by industry as the costs are in 2013. This is just another look at typical costs. Again, just the hard cost. It doesn't take into consideration the intangibles. We will be discussing your cost of downtime a bit in another few minutes. Slow inflation, not in downtime recovery. These costs just keep rising. Assuming that the economy continues to improve, which it is projected to do, these numbers will likely continue to increase, especially as inflation begins to strengthen. Note that these statistics, once again, are only for hard cost. Softer and tangible costs are not reflected, but can be even more damaging. Now for some not so obvious impacts. So we have mentioned several times that there are non-tangible, harder to quantify costs. If you are in a high visibility industry, downtime can get the attention of regulatory agencies or even spur legal repercussions. The damage to key individual confidence can be tremendous as well. It can also impact your share price if you're a publicly traded company. Customer confidence in your products, services, and company as a whole can drop. Employee confidence can be damaged to the point of seeing turnover. This can be one of the most costly impacts as you watch top talent in tribal knowledge walk out the door and you have to spend a huge amount to rehire and retrain. Finally, your overall brand and reputation in the marketplace can be reduced, making it harder to hire talent and generate revenue at the margin you need or expect. This slide demonstrates some examples of the intangible cost along with some quotes. This might sound a little fuzzy to you, but it is real stuff. Decreased customer loyalty, downtime equates to a reduction in availability of whatever it is you are providing to your customers, whether it be hard product, intellectual product, service, or another value. When customers can't get what they want, when they want it, chances are good they will start looking elsewhere. Or at the very least, be open to other options when the competition comes knocking. Damage to your company's reputation. If you thought the media could be cruel, you probably have not dealt with a PR issue that hit social media yet. Most will at some point, and some companies will not survive the deluge of negativity that follows. The simple fact is that it is far less costly or time-consuming to put a tool in place before the problems occur than deal with a threat to your company name and maybe your personal reputation as well. The 80-20 rule is in full effect. If you mitigate the risk of the most likely 20% of the threats to your business, your uptime will reduce 80% of your potential downtime. So at this time, we'd like to do a participant poll. I believe Joshua will open up the polling. And have you calculated a reliable cost of downtime for your business? I'd like to ask you personally on the call today, have you thought about this? Number one, yes, I am highly confident in our ability to quantify downtime cost. Two, I have a rough idea, but I would not bet the business on it. Or three, I have no idea what downtime costs the company. And I'll pause for just a minute.
Yep, we have 60% said I have a rough idea, but would not bet the business on it. And 40% said I have no idea what downtime costs the company.
Great, thank you, Joshua, and thank you, participants, for being quick and candid with your response. So what's the cost of downtime? And if you need a starting point, we do have a calculator that is available that will give you some idea. It's a pretty neat little tool that we created to get you within the ballpark. The tool is customizable, so you can be as conservative or aggressive with your calculation as you would like. This should also be a useful tool as we get into the actual process of convincing the powers that be to give you the resources you need. And so, what about you personally? We've made a couple of comments referencing personal reputation. The resulting impact on a career can be significant. I have a short story for you that I'm going to go through that is a real life example. They thought they were ready for anything. An organization in a heavily regulated industry had spent millions building out a comprehensive disaster recovery plan, including a dedicated failover data center humming with hundreds of virtual hosts and a gigabit Ethernet connection. But when an unplanned network outage cut the connection to its primary data center, the money the organization spent on its DR solution was for naught. The CTO did not have the confidence to activate the disaster recovery plan because they had never tested it, says Michael De La Torre, Vice President of Recovery Services and Product Management for SunGuard Availability Services, which was called in by the organization later to shore up its DR strategy. Instead, he stood by for more than a day, hoping the circuit would be repaired. Everyone was offline that entire time. Employees had no access to email or data files, and the organization took a pretty big hit to its reputation. Shortly thereafter, the CTO's career also suffered an unplanned outage. More than half of all organizations with disaster recovery plans in place fail to adequately test them, notes De La Torre. Even those that do test uncover an average of 5 critical errors in the people, process, and tools needed to make DR work. Disaster recovery is neither glamorous nor easy, but it's vital to the survival of your company. Protecting the business may never get you promoted, but failing to do so will almost always get you fired. So making your case. Using Simon Sinek's golden circle, and he's also written Start With Why, people don't make decisions based on what the company does. They make them based on why they do it, or why the company is there. Understand the why in terms the decision maker can understand. That's your boss. How represents how a disruption will impact your business and how you can avoid it. What is the detail of what needs to be done to execute the how. So starting with why. Why does your company exist? Is it pure profit, customer satisfaction, growth? Knowing this will frame how you present the why to management. How would downtime impact this why? If focused on profit, you can cite the financial impact of downtime presented earlier. If it's customer satisfaction, help them understand how their customers will feel if their service or product is not available due to an outage. Once you know why, move to how. How would downtime caused by controllable environmental issues impact the why? This is not how you are going to buy the equipment you need. Focus on how downtime that could have been avoided is going to negatively impact your why. Then focus on how the company can mitigate the risk to the why. Look internal. Low or no cost ways to include, such as disaster planning, yearly reviews of the plan, etc. The goal at this point is not to request the resources, it's to create the emotional tie between the how and the why. Support the how with facts. Checklist, worksheet, cost of doing nothing calculator, case study libraries. Once again, the cost of doing nothing calculator, as well as the metrics provided earlier in this presentation, they can give you a great foundation for the how. How can be the hardest part. Be prepared to challenge your boss. Your boss wants you to challenge him or her if it means the continuity of the business. Senior management are susceptible to the same influence everyone else is, and those influences frequently include getting wrapped up on big scary things that are happening right now, but probably won't happen again. So top of mind doesn't always equal good priority. It's easy to get caught up in what just happened, as we are speaking of shortly, the last slide. Active shooters, hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes, weather phenomenons. These things are emotionally alarming, but the probability of them happening again are low compared to other threats. And in some cases, the more likely threats are more costly as well. But it's the less dramatic threats that can cause the biggest problems. As we've shown in the previous slides, water leaks, power outages, overheating, equipment failure, those are your more common causes of failure that cause downtime within your facility. These threats are far more probable than those on the previous slide, accounting for some by estimates 10x more downtime than higher profile dangers. But those that hold the purse strings are still going to be hesitant to apply money to these threats over higher profile dangers. That's why you have to give them a carrot. I love this chart. I think this chart really gives some impact and some heightened visibility to the more probable occurrences out there. The likelihood is arguably a more important factor than impact. This chart is multiplicative, so for example, if you place a hurricane as improbable probability and a critical impact, it equals 4 points. Place a water leak that damages the facility as moderate likelihood and a serious impact, you get 9 points. Finally, provide the what. Build out a candid, honest proposal for what you need to execute the how. Do your homework on what protection, products, and vendors best suit your needs. Present a comprehensive proposal on the decision makers, what proves you have the lowest cost solution to protect the what. We have a worksheet that can help with water leak detection for reference. This is a good example. This is an example of a leak detection checklist for a relatively small facility that walks you through how to spec out a general system. Lean on your vendors for help in preparing a proposal. Good vendors will give you solutions and candid feedback and act as a true partner. Here's an example of a case study at the University of Northern Colorado. Director of IT Services, Marcus McCutcheon, identified vulnerabilities in the telephone and computing centers at UNC. Step one was the why. As we've discussed, knowing UNC's vision statement provided the basis. The University of Northern Colorado strives to be a leading student-centered university that promotes effective teaching, lifelong learning, and advancement of knowledge, research, and commitment to service. This is what enabled Marcus to focus on the student experience in his argument for sufficient facility monitoring. Step two, the how. How would an environmental disaster impact the student experience and ability to effectively learn? Reduce student effectiveness, impact student confidence in the university, jeopardize student security. The calculated cost of forecasted downtime was $92,000 an hour conservatively. How to limit the risk to the student experience. So implement a disaster mitigation and recovery plan, deploy leak detection equipment, and schedule annual reviews of the plan. Step three, what? Marcus started with a mitigation plan and review process. He then worked with RLE to design a leak detection system. Fluid sensing cable, distance read, spot detectors, automated notifications of key personnel. Presented a final proposal including cost of downtime, cost of new system, and the ROI calculation. The administration at the University of Northern Colorado fast-tracked and approved the facility monitoring plan. Staff at UNC integrated a proactive, cost-effective, and user-friendly monitoring system in just 6 weeks. The epilogue, less than 3 months later, a small problem did occur. Moisture in the telephone switch room was detected. Upon inspection, moisture was found along a section of monitoring cable as well as a ceiling tile. The problem was eventually traced 1 story higher to a cracked floor sink, which was located directly above a critical piece of telecommunication equipment. Had the leak gone undetected, tens of thousands of dollars in downtime would have resulted. For all the participants on the call, I cannot tell you how many data centers I am in over the course of 3 to 6 months. And more times than not, when asked if you have leak detection, they say no. And have you ever had a leak and did it cause downtime? The answer is yes. It is a very common occurrence. Prevent catastrophes and don't clean them up. That is the ending point with our webcast today.
Okay. If anybody has any questions, please type them into the chat box. We'll give them a moment or two to take care of that. See if anything comes through. Okay, 1 second. And then if you do have any questions after the presentation, Jeremy's constant email and phone number are on the screen, so I'm sure you'd be happy if you reach out to him.
Absolutely.
Okay. I don't see any questions coming through, so I'll go ahead and wrap this up. Jeremy, I want to thank you very much for your time in the presentation, and you have a great day. And everyone, thank you for attending.
Thank you, Joshua.